let's go to our team's call as we got our guy Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson NOLA. Catch him on the Locked on Saints podcast. Now back in the 504. Ross, what's up, man? How you doing today?
Hey, guys. Glad to be here with you this morning, man. Appreciate y'all having me on. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Heck yes, man. Sorry getting to you a little late here. But New Orleans Saints camp schedule officially announced. First practice going to start on July 27th. First public practice, July 30th. The NFL, always wanting to market something, Jake. Now the first day of public camp practice is an NFL-wide event. It's a Saturday initiative called Back Together Saturday. It says it's going to have multiple interactive entertainment elements, blah, 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 blah. Ross, have you heard anything? Actually, let me start here. How excited are you to be back in New Orleans for Saints camp? And after you've been talking about it for years and years, to be able to get to be boots on the ground, firsthand viewing this team?
Yeah, look, it's the thing I've been looking forward to the most over the course of this offseason, and especially considering what the last couple of years have been like, to where even, when we do have access, it's like Zoom access and things like that, which has been great because I've been able to do a little bit more from a distance. But being able to be here, be boots on the ground, be there during training camp and everything, and be able to bring a little bit of, firsthand analysis of what we're seeing is going to be, hugely beneficial and is awesome. I mean, like it's a great thing to get the opportunity to be a part of, and you could tell that the NFL as well as the New Orleans Saints are very excited to get everybody back together and be in that space. And we talked last time I was on about the excitement around this team in 2022, and it all gets started when rookies report on the 19th, but it all gets started really in earnest on the 27th, that first day of camp.
And Ross, as you go into camp, and you talk about this every single day on the Locked on Saints podcast, what storylines, like what are you going to be focusing on going into day number one?
Yeah, there's a couple of big categories I think I would break things down in. There's sort of the health category, there's the new faces category, and then there's sort of the coaching category in all of it. And so I'll be looking at sort of those three groupings of kind of storylines as we go in. The health category would include people like Jameis Winston, like Michael Thomas. How quickly do we see them out on the field? Jameis has been, as you guys have talked about before, working out, and we're seeing him now without the knee brace on his left knee. And also we've seen the great progress that he's made since just mandatory mini camps, right? That short, what felt like maybe, a long time in between as we get here closer to training camp. But, that short couple of weeks ago that he was still in that brace. Michael Thomas, how quickly is he going to be back in the fold for the Saints? The goal was to have him back during training camp. I imagine it's going to be sort of a shorter ramp up period, that he's not going to be full go, day one of camp or anything like that. But we'll see, right? How quickly do we see Taysom Hill back? Peyton Turner has been cleared. So there's a lot of health storylines around this. Maybe certainly not the least important is even just the return of kicker Will Lutz is something you're going to be watching for all throughout camp. And how's his mechanics? How is he doing? What is he looking like throughout? So that will be a big piece of it. The new additions come down to the rookies, both drafted and undrafted. Guys like Chris Olave and Trevor Penning, of course, will headline the list as the top draft picks for the New Orleans Saints this year. But also the new additions that came through free agency, like Jarvis Landry and Tyrann Mathieu. How are they fitting? What's the communication like? What's the chemistry like? All of that. And then with the coaching, you have a lot of new coaches. Cody Burns in at wide receiver coach. You've seen the changes now for guys like Chris Richard and Ryan Nielsen stepping into co-defensive coordinator positions. How does that work out? Doug Marrone coming back to New Orleans Saints as offensive line coach. And then, of course, you're watching Dennis Allen, who took that step up to head coach. So the coaching staff will be a big-time storyline to follow throughout camp as well.
All right, Ross, what about position battles? What about a group maybe you're watching to see if one guy can rise up to be the starter? Because there's a couple of position battles on this team. Like, you've got some really good players in those battles, but you're waiting to kind of see who's going to step up and take that starting role.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the first ones that you're going to be watching, I'll double back a little bit. I'm going to cheat for just a second, guys. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go back to Trevor Penning for a moment because he's in that position battle, right? Yeah. He's got the big position battle over at that left tackle spot. Who's going to be the person to step in place of Teron Armstead, who the Saints lost during free agency, headed to the Miami Dolphins. Him and James Hurst, Trevor Penning and James Hurst, those are going to be the first two guys in line for that position at left tackle. If James Hurst ends up being the starting left tackle week one, it's not the worst situation for the New Orleans Saints. They then just get get to develop Trevor Penning in the background, and they have a master sort of key developer there now at offensive line coach in Doug Marrone, and of course Zach Strief, who's done it before in the very same system. So that will be a big position battle to watch. If Trevor Penning ends up winning that spot, it'll be interesting to see where James Hurst gets other opportunities. They really like him. Does he get an opportunity to compete on the interior as well? That would be a big thing to watch in terms of the ripple effect of Trevor Penning winning that left tackle spot if he could do that, straight out the gate. The other position over on defense that you're going to be watching, of course, is going to be cornerback opposite Marshawn Lattimore. Last year, Paulson Adebo, third-round selection, one of my favorite draft selections or draft prospects of last year's draft. He came in. He had the starting role week 1 because Bradley Roby, who the Saints traded for at the beginning of the season, was suspended, and he never let it go. Walked away with 3 interceptions, 66 tackles throughout the season, had some really nice moments throughout the year, his rookie year. A little bit of ups and downs, but what you expect from the cornerback spot. He, could take a big step going ahead here in year 2, but he's also got now Alante Taylor in the building as well as Bradley Roby, who are going to be competing at that spot as well.
Talking to Ross Jackson, as you can tell, man, this man knows the Saints inside and out, brings you interesting talk of the Saints every single day. Locked on Saints podcast. Go ahead and subscribe today at Ross Jackson on Twitter. Hey, Ross, I feel bad because I think you touched on a lot of very interesting actual football conversations, but one of the storylines that will suck up all the oxygen in the room, we're going to go back to some of your reference, is the Mike Thomas situation, right? I mean, 2 years removed from that ankle injury, and still the start of camp is viewed as a goal. It's not like Peyton Turner where they've come out and said, oh, he's cleared to go, he's good to go. What's your view on the situation, and how will you react to whether or not he plays day 1, July 27th?
I have no expectation that he plays July 27th. That is like that he's out there full go on July 27th. But that's just me, right? That's just me talking about my expectation, right? I'm not reporting anything or anything like that. That's just sort of my speculation. I don't see why you would. I think you give him the opportunity to continue to ramp up into camp. He's going to have the acclimation period. There's a 5-day acclimation period that's built in from the reporting date anyway. And then after that, so I sort of look at training camp as sort of being a little bit of a moving target in terms of when Michael Thomas gets back to the team full go. I think you give him the opportunity to get settled. You give him the opportunity to get into the flow of things. You give him an opportunity to ramp up, and then you get him started a couple of weeks into camp. Seems to be the process that I am kind of expecting at this time. We'll see what the New Orleans Saints actually do, but I personally would be very surprised to see him full go right at the beginning of camp. This has really been the first offseason since the injury that he's actually been able to spend time with the team at the facility, going through their rehab regimen and going through their schedule. And I don't imagine that their schedule would push him too quickly or too far too quickly. I think getting him ready for week 1 should be the absolute goal. September 11th, to have him out there on the field, that should be the first and foremost priority. And whatever it takes during training camp to make sure that happens, even if that's a slower ramp up period, I think that's what the New Orleans Saints should do.
Ross, I want to ask you about the running back group because we've seen them bring in some veteran guys. We've seen David Johnson out there at a mini camp and kind of a tryout situation. Now, we don't know, maybe they'll bring him back. I know certainly they've done that in the past. Do you think this running back group is set, or do you think they're still continuing to look maybe at adding a veteran player?
Oh, I think they'll certainly get a look at more players. I think we've seen this year in and year out with the New Orleans Saints during training camp. Veteran running backs, veteran linebackers, they always get additional looks at additional guys throughout camp. And sometimes they do that because of a situation like this where you may be looking to add another running back before the season begins. Sometimes they do it just simply because those positions take on a lot of injuries. And so you want to kind of have this sort of log of players that you've looked at, that you've seen, that you have notes on, that you can go back to whenever you need to bring somebody in as a reserve or a backup or an emergency situation, anything like that. So I think they'll continue to get a look at veterans as well as at other positions as well. Offensive line, defensive line, wide receiver. Wouldn't be surprised to see them look at all of that as well. Sort of your premier spots in terms of what's most important to this offense and defense. I think that the Saints will wisely take a look at what they have in the room first. Guys like Mark Ingram, Tony Jones Jr., Abram Smith, Dwayne Washington, and so on, and see if anybody kind of rises to the top, sort of like what you saw last year when Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman were also a part of that room. But Tony Jones Jr. rose to the top throughout training camp and all. He didn't have the season maybe that you expected. He had a great week 1 to open things up. He had a nice preseason, but he rose to the top during training camp. They were to make the decisions based on that. If somebody can make the decision for them that's already in the room, then that's good news for the New Orleans Saints. But I think that they'll also take some time to get a look at some other veterans throughout the course of training camp.
Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson NOLA on Twitter. Again, subscribe to Locked On Saints podcast. Ross does incredible work. So happy to have him back here in the boot. Going to get even better now that he can break it all down live. Ross, thank you so much for joining us this morning, man.
Hey, guys, absolute pleasure. Always enjoy being here with you. Thanks so much for having me on. Thanks, everybody in the booth. I'll see y'all soon. Take care. Stay safe.
Heck yeah, man. How about the quality of Ross's mic and camera, too? Sheesh. That's a pro right there, boys.